Welcome to The Voice of Counseling, presented by the American Counseling Association. This program is hosted by Dr. S. Kent Butler. This week's episode is Affirmative Therapy and features Dr. Colleen R. Logan.
Welcome to The Voice of Counseling from the American Counseling Association. I'm your host, Dr. S. Kent Butler, and joining us today, Dr. Colleen R. Logan. Dr. Logan is a licensed professional counselor and holds a master's in counselor education from Duquesne University and a PhD in counselor education from the University of Virginia. She joined Barry University as professor and chair of the counseling program in 2021 and has a national and international reputation as a trainer and speaker. She is phenomenal. Her career spans decades of activism, advocacy, and diversity training. She's a fellow and past president of the American Counseling Association. In addition, the ACA has commended her for her contributions to the field of counseling, as well as her unwavering commitment to affirmative therapy for LGBTQ individuals, couples, and families, social justice, and advocacy for marginalized populations. She has authored and co-authored numerous articles and book chapters and received many awards for her teaching and service, including her most recent recognition as a recipient of the prestigious Rotunda Outstanding Professor Award from the Southern Methodist University. Help me welcome in Dr. Colleen R. Logan. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. How are you?
I'm good. It's good to see you, and it's good to be neighbors with you. I see you in Florida now.
I know. It is good to be neighbors with you. Now, you're in Melbourne, is that right?
I'm in, I live close to Melbourne, but I'm in Orlando area. I live in actually Chulioda, Florida, but don't say that very often. And so whenever somebody asks me, I say, Orlando, they know where that is.
Exactly. Well, I actually live in Hollywood, just north of Miami.
Oh yeah, okay, nice. I like Hollywood. Very colorful city there. If I remember correctly, that's like the arts city of Florida, right? It has all the beautiful buildings, the colorful buildings.
Yes.
Yeah, nice. So your passion has been affirmative therapy. Can you kind of talk a little bit about that and what that has been like, and what's your career been, I guess, sparked by the passion that has brought you there?
Absolutely. So when we first started in the field working with LGBTQ individuals, couples, and families, the idea then was the individual, the couple had to come out. That was like the pinnacle of therapy.
Yeah.
And we were off. We really were off. With this binary, come out, stay in, heterosexual, homosexual. I mean, we were learning, we were evolving, but we were off because what we realized is that it's not always safe to come out, to be out, live out. And in fact, requiring that of someone could actually put that person at risk and cause more damage than homo prejudice or any kind of prejudice that person has already experienced. So it became part of who I am, not only as a therapist, but as a counselor educator, to affirm the human being in front of me, where they're at, meeting them where they're at, and helping them to make decisions that are right for that person and that context at that time. And that kind of grew this idea that I'm going to affirm you. I'm just going to affirm you just because you're human, just because you're here.
That's beautiful. That is absolutely beautiful. Can you talk a little bit about why it's important to recognize that? Because a lot of times people are like, oh, come on, come out, do this, and everything's going to be okay. But you're right. It's not a safe space for many individuals. And can you just talk a little bit about how come we as advocates have to speak up on behalf of our clients from where they are and not from where we are?
Exactly. So we come from a place of power. As therapists, as counselor educators, we come from a place of privilege with education. So recognizing that is step one. So when I meet you where you're at, I have to start with the fundamental value that you're human and that you're where you're at because of your own stories, your own narratives, your own context, and because I've had the privilege of living out. I've had the privilege of acceptance that I can in no way assume or expect that you have those privileges. In fact, I come to the therapeutic or the counselor, educator, and student relationship with humility, with the idea that if I'm going to get to know you, if you feel valued by me, if you feel seen by me, then I have to hear you. I have to hear you where you're at, see you where you're at. And maybe the goal is to come out, live out, and maybe it's not. That's not for me to decide for you.
Yeah, I've been in situations in the past where someone who was not ready was outed and had to then deal with that. And and then the person who does it goes away, goes by the wayside, and has you've done this damage now, and now this person has to live with that and deal with that based on what you did when you didn't have a conversation with them, you didn't talk with them, you just felt that it was your space and your place to do something like that.
Exactly. And it leaves that person vulnerable. I mean, people still lose jobs, people still
Yes.
lose homes, people still lose their lives for who
Yeah.
they are and who they love.
Powerful. So when you talk about being an affirmative therapist, especially as a counselor educator, how has that been impacted by the pandemic?
Yeah, it's a great question. As you know, we all had to pivot as counselor educators from being in the classroom, which we all love, and then start teaching virtually through WebEx or through Zoom. Well, that is a unidimensional experience of meeting people where they are. And I think to our detriment, we brought the rules, the expectations of the classroom to Zoom. That meant, how many of us have in our syllabi, dress professionally, speak professionally? You're now going into someone's home with a camera, with an expectation that your home is professional. Your dress is professional, with the expectation that what it took you to get up and turn on the computer was absolutely exhausting because this is a pandemic and I've lost family and I'm insecure about my home, or I'm homeless, or I'm attending class from my car, or I have food insecurity. And when we didn't match the expectation with the actual vehicle, I think we lost connection with our students. I think we lost the humanness.
Right.
It needed to be brought bigger to the screen, not
Yeah.
to.
Yeah, I like that because again, it acknowledges that we have to be forward thinking and we have to open up our minds to the many possibilities that are out there. When you talk from that perspective, it just made me think that, we have all these expectations that someone is going to just fall right into our grasp and just do whatever we say and live the way that we hope that they would be able to live. But, the thing about being a counselor educator now, I think with the pandemic and everybody going online, there were some of us, and I think I was included in this, that kind of frowned at online teaching and therapy from that perspective. But then we came in like gangbusters and kind of tried to, do something that people were already doing and not hearing from them as to how to best do it.
You're absolutely. It does. There's so many variables, right? There were institutions that were teaching online for a long time, and there was definitely this, oh, you do online. Right?
Yes.
We're somehow superior because we still teach face to face. Everything changed. Exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
The whole playing field changed. So that's one variable. So everybody now was scrambling. Oh, well, wait, how do I have best practices to teach online? I've never done this. This doesn't feel comfortable.
Right.
And online folks are going,
That's what like this. When we were trying to get you to talk about ethics and we were talking about all these other things that we needed you all to do, y'all didn't want to play. But now it's like, oh, you got all the answers.
It's the truth. It's the truth. And there was this assumption that it's somehow easier. Like you eat bonbons when you teach virtually. And the truth is, it's work. You really work at being present and reading the room and connecting.
Yeah.
And then there's that other variable that I was referencing before, and that is, the assumptions. So we assume everybody has equal access to the internet. We assume everybody has equal access to a computer screen that's wide enough. I mean, the assumptions that they just poured out, they cascaded out.
Yeah.
And again, I think led to disconnection until we kind of righted ourselves. And we were part of that, that shifted pandemic. And we were trying to sort ourselves. So not to criticize, just to own what that was.
Right. I remember when I first, not that I didn't know it, right? I knew that there were, unbalanced, right? That I knew that everybody didn't have equal access to many different things. But it really came to light when my university had to deal with the CARES Act, and then find out that there were students who had to go online, again, that pivot, who didn't have internet access, who did not have computers, and all those other things. It's like, wow. We take for granted that when you are a college student, that you have all of these things in at your disposal.
Right. And so then introduce fear. Now I'm in this program. I'm the first person in my family to go to graduate school. I'm so excited. We pivot, and now I'm going to be exposed. And I'm not equal. I'm not. I don't have all of these privileges. I don't. What's that going to mean for me as a student? What's that going to mean for my grade or for my relationship with my professor? And so add all that stress in a pandemic, in social strife, in climate change. I mean, if we're not reaching out to students in all kinds of different ways, then we're missing the boat in terms of connection with humans.
Talk about connections to humans, and I'm wondering about the connection to yourself. And so can you tell me a little bit about how during this pandemic, especially with all the stuff that's been going on, how that plus the ongoing social rest has impacted you in the work that you do?
Yes. One of the first things that I did with a colleague, Dr. Cindy Matthews, we created spaces that weren't a classroom, that weren't any kind of honors group or any kind of, educational foundation. It was a space where you could have coffee on a Tuesday morning, and a space where you could have any kind of beverage that you wanted on a Friday afternoon. And in those spaces, we called them brave spaces, not safe spaces, brave spaces.
Right.
Because in those spaces, you could say what you needed to say, and you could ask the questions you needed to ask, and you could be vulnerable. And those conversations, those courageous conversations led to, we created a newsletter chock full of resources related to social injustice and the social strife that was occurring, related to how do you take care of yourself whenever you feel isolated, or you have, all 5 of your family members are there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. How do you find a little nook so that you can see yourself, be with yourself? And every week we had more and more students join us. And every week we had more and more rich conversations, more and more courageous and brave conversations. And in fact, that was the connection. And again, we had to take it out of the classroom.
Yeah.
We had to take it out of that expectation, out of that uniform. We had to give it a relaxed, safe space that was brave.
That was brave. Wow. I'm sitting here listening to you speak, and, one of the things I've always been fascinated with about you is you have the most silky smooth voice that I have heard coming from a person. And I just love your speaking voice. And so I just had to just say that real quick. But I want to pivot back to this, and listening to you talk about clients and counselors and where we were in this. Clients were very impacted by this pandemic in so many different ways. Do you see there being variations in how they seek your help at this particular point in time because of the pandemic?
Absolutely. I will tell you that the first, after we pivoted, there was fear, of course, because the pandemic was raging and, cities were shutting down. But there was this resistance to, hey, I count on that time in person with you. I count on that empathic, that affirmative, that warm acceptance that we create together in relationship, in therapeutic relationship. I can't do that through a screen. So it did take some convincing, some, trial and error runs at, okay, let's try this. And just like teaching online, Therapy online requires us to kick up our game, to really make sure that we are in tune, we are in space, we are connected to our client, so that atmosphere that's kind of the magic sauce, part of the magic sauce of what we do, is created in this format.
That's pretty interesting that you speak to that, because I think that, you know, especially those who have a hard time grasping change, right? It's like, I need to stick with the status quo. I need to stay with the things that make me comfortable. But when you talk about the use of tech and therapy and teletherapy, it's impacted us. And it impacts our work with clients. So from your perspective, how have you seen kind of that come play itself out?
Once the change occurred, and with the pivot, wasn't just, we had some space from pivoting. Clients actually found that it's convenient to meet online. I don't have to get in the car and face Miami traffic, Dallas traffic, New York traffic.
Yeah.
I can be in the comfort of my own home. Oh, wait, if I'm in the comfort of my own home and I haven't driven there and tried to find parking and I'm running late and I have this enormous issue I want to talk about, I can be in my PJs and I can be in my comfortable chair. Wait, I can be more comfortable. I can actually be more vulnerable because I'm in my safe space.
Is there a danger to being too vulnerable? In some cases like that? I mean, I heard you say that, but then I thought about, is there too much comfort sometimes in terms of how we are utilizing the technology?
Well, I think that's the question, right? And that's where we have to really enhance our skills.
Okay.
Right? That's required of us. So it can't be too comfortable so that, somehow we lose the hallowed, to use that word, hallowed, characteristics of what a therapeutic relation is. I'm still not your friend. I'm still not your buddy. I'm not your BFF. I'm still your therapist.
I'm still your therapist.
And this is still a sacred space that we have created based on relationship and rapport and those other characteristics. But it's on me, I think, for me to monitor that, to gauge that, to, if it slips into too comfortable, to bring it back to a professional relationship.
Yeah. So how do you kind of cultivate that in clients though? Because like, they are working from their home sometimes, whatever that space is, whatever home is for them, right? And so they have there's outside noises that are different than being in a office area or in your actual office when they come in person. Is there something that we as counselors need to also help our clients understand in terms of, okay, this person just walked through, and having some space where there's confidentiality and other things so that you can kind of have the opportunity to be with me in the moment, in the here and now? Is there something that we need to do to cultivate that as well?
I think I have two answers to that. Yes, we need to still enforce, informed consent and confidentiality, and find a space where you can be alone and no one's going to interrupt. Also, at the same time, also,
yes,
it happens to us as therapists. A dog barks.
Yep.
Of course, the landscaper, whoever is cutting the lawn, comes at that 4 o'clock time.
Yes.
And I think that reality actually brings back, which I know I've been hitting this a lot this time together with you, it brings the humanness. So I'm in my space too, and the internet just was unstable. A car was beeping next to me. And I think that brings humanness to this interaction at the same time that we're maintaining the sacredness of the therapeutic relationship.
Yeah. And does that impact also, when you talk about being there for your client, right? I'm in the here and now and I'm there for you. Can those other things be distractions that can kind of take you out of that moment? And how do we have to be careful there?
If you're in the here and now, then those distractions are part of the here and now. Okay. That was my Australian cattle dog barking again. Ha ha ha. Please. Okay. And stop. I mean, because I think it would be
acknowledge it.
Exactly.
The elephant in the room. Yeah. Okay.
Like we would do if we were sitting in the same room and a dog barked. We would say, "Ha, listen to that dog."
Yes.
And go back to our work.
Wow.
I think that makes it real. I think that makes it authentic. And I think that that strengthens trust and rapport.
Yeah.
In this
Do you look for things differently? Because I'm thinking, like, in the here and now, I will be in a room and I can see everything, right? I'm watching your body language and other things that are happening. Do you see it differently when you're working with somebody online?
That's interesting you say that, because I miss seeing, the tapping of the foot, the shaking of the leg, the
Yes.
crossed. But again, it just makes me turn up my observational skills, because I'm
Yeah.
going to have to see you from shoulders up, and I'm going to have to be in tune, watching, and seeing, oh, I saw you look away, or I saw you.
I saw you look away. Yeah. And, it's really funny because, when you were saying that just now, I was thinking about the movie Encanto, and I don't know if you saw it, but that one part where the young lady's eye is twitching,
Yes,
we have to be ready to see the twitch.
that's right.
Wow.
That's right.
Wow.
Wow. You know what? Just in that moment, that connection that you and I have,
Yeah.
it washed over me. That's
Yeah.
because we're that in tune with each other. And I
Yeah.
think we translate that to our work as counselor educators and our work as counselors. And that's the work.
That's the word. Wow. Yeah. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
So what has the need to go remote taught us about relationships? I think that kind of goes right back to what you just said in terms of our connection right now and finding belonging, and all those other things that come with it, right? What are your thoughts there?
The same skills that we use in person, we have to use amplified whenever we're virtual. I have to give you the message that I value you, that you matter, that I see you, I hear you, and I want to be in relationship with you.
Wow.
And if I can do that virtually,
Hmm.
then that's the work.
Yeah. And it means that we have to really do our homework, and we have to do the things that are necessary to recognize what this moment actually really means.
Yes.
We just can't take for granted that, hey, I did it before in person, I can just go ahead and do it now.
Right.
And the CEUs and all those other things, that are important, but really connecting with who you are as a practitioner becomes that much more important, when you have changed up your environment, because it would be inappropriate to use the skill set that you have for an in-person type of a setting and just automatically assume that it's going to work online.
Right. And what's interesting is we're talking about a parallel process here. What happened from face to face in the classroom to the
Mhm.
online,
Yeah.
we'll assume this is going to be easy. I'm
Yeah.
not right. I'm going to eat bonbons and teach ethics.
Yeah.
Same, right? The transfer from face to face therapy. Oh, I'll be at home and I'll be more comfortable. This will be
Yeah.
easy. And I guess my primary message is it's not. It's
Yeah.
and if it were easy, then it wouldn't be professional counseling. It's not supposed to be easy. It is work. It is about being present. It
Right.
is about working on your skills and your
Yeah.
intention and your connection with others.
So I liked what you said about, working with your friends and colleagues, around coffee or having those little meetings and things along those lines. I have my tribe as well. Actually, we meet, on Wednesdays, first Wednesdays of every month in the evening. We meet for 2 hours just to kind of check in with one another and see how things are going, to help us belong, in a sense, right? And so in our field, I think that many people find it difficult to feel like they belong. What are some things that we can do, or other than what you just spoke about, what I just spoke about, can you speak to some reasons as to why that is and what we can do about it?
Right. So if we don't feel like we belong or we're valued, really, what's the point? I mean, if we're not seen as a participant, if we're not seen as someone who can sit at the table, if we're not asked for our opinion, our perspective, then really people leave people. People don't leave a work site. They leave people because you don't see me, you don't hear me, you don't value me. So I don't belong here. So I'm not going to be productive. So that universal need to belong it impacts the therapeutic relationship. It impacts where we work. It impacts any relationship, really. And, we talk about diversity and equity and inclusion, and that's it, being invited to the dance. But belonging means when you get to the dance, they're playing the music you like.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Can we hear my song for a moment? I need to be able to get into the groove too.
Exactly. Right. And you're playing my song.
Yes.
Oh, I
Yes.
belong here.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow. Yes. Yeah. I just wrote a piece. I turned it into for my April column for ACA, the Counseling Today column for president. And I wrote about some music and just being in the car and hearing that song that puts you back.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. And that's the feeling of belonging.
Yeah.
That song that takes you back, that song that changes your mood,
Yeah.
changes the neuropathway.
Changes your mood. Yes. And it lets you know that you had a life, and it lets you know that there's love, that lets you know all the things that, that help you to continue to champion life and move forward and do the things that are necessary, right? So we're coming up on our break shortly. So I want to really ask you, before we go into some other stuff that I think we'll hit in the next part, but what was it like, and what made you look at the ACA presidency?
It was the most extraordinary, transformative experience of my entire career. The opportunity to meet and be in space with other counselor educators, counselors across the world was phenomenal. And I have been grateful and humbled and just so honored that I was able to serve in that capacity. And what made me pursue it, that leadership role, was affirmative access for those who are marginalized, not only our clients, but our peers and colleagues. And I was driven to kind of bring people together because I do believe, honestly, I'm going to tell you my bias. I think counseling is the greatest profession in the world. And I like to tell my students, I say, well, I practice it, I teach it, I served as the ACA president. I have some credibility here. I think it's the greatest profession in the world.
Yeah. I told this to a few folks, and one of the things. So I admire people from afar, and of course I've gotten to know you or meet you, but when the time when you were president and I was just like working and doing those types of things, I didn't talk to people like you. And I stayed away, not because I couldn't talk to you, but because I guess it was some type of a reverence that I had to, you were ACA president, this and that. And then when I got to know you, it's like, why did you have those pretenses? Just talk. We're just people. And so it's so cool to just see you. So I tell this to a few folks, it's like, I want to go to conferences and I can't wait to go back again because I get to see people like you who, just real down to earth people who just happen to have been ACA president or to done this or done that in their life, right? Because we're still just humans and we're still just trying to do the right thing, right?
That's right. Exactly.
And so, you carry a very positive vibe, and I also note, I think I know this. I think we had this conversation before. You claim to be shy.
Uh-oh. True revelations. True? I claim to be introverted. I don't know about shy, but yes. But
introverted. Okay, introverted. Because I claim to be introverted as well. But you don't let that, and I know that we have to go back and kind of regroup and get all that other stuff, but your introvertedness doesn't stop you from still being present. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I actually, I was raised, I'm Northern Irish, and if you know anything about the Irish, we love a story. And that was what I loved. My father would tell stories. Anybody who would tell a story, I just loved hearing a story. And that would energize me, anybody's story. And so when I'm speaking or whenever I'm engaged with others in a workshop or in the classroom, or it's a story, and that interests me. You interest me. Your details, your context, who you are, who you want to be, really fires up my passion. And so I go with the wave, and I love it. I mean, that's what has carried me through my career, and hopefully for a long time. I just love hearing people's stories. And if I can help someone, wow.
You do. Wow, that's in itself, that's a very powerful narrative, what you just shared. And so we're coming up on our break time, and I want to honor our commitment to taking a break. So this has been The Voice of Counseling. I'm here with Dr. Colleen R. Logan, who has just dropped the mic several times during our first half, and we'll be back in a moment.
Counselors help positively impact lives by providing support, wellness, treatment. We're working to change lives. We are creating a world where every person has access to the quality, professional counseling, and mental health services needed to thrive.
Welcome back to The Voice of Counseling from the American Counseling Association. I'm Dr. S. Kent Butler, and today we're talking with Dr. Colleen R. Logan, and we're having a phenomenal time. And I want to kind of talk a little bit about her work and what she's passionate about, and also this idea of maybe starting off with talking about reparative therapy. There is this thing that's out there that people seem to want to gravitate towards, that's called reparative therapy. And there's this thing that's also happening out there that looks like spiritual abuse. Mm-hmm. How can we do a better job of supporting those who have expertise in these types of areas and or not expertise in these types of areas? Or how do you see it? This let me pull back and ask you, how do you see it?
Right. I remember when we first started talking about reparative therapy, and we'd spell it on the poster board, REPAIR, and we put that in quotes because the idea that you could repair someone who had a different affectional orientation was just mind-boggling, ludicrous to those of us who were presenting at workshops. But it didn't go away. Granted, all of the organizations, the American Medical Association, the American Psychological Association, American Counseling Association, we came through with strong statements that if it wasn't evidence-based, if it wasn't research-based therapy, you couldn't engage with it. And I think there was a little bit of, okay, we did that work, and so that means it's over. And there's where that assumption, power, privilege, sitting back on our laurels comes into play, because it still goes on today. And in fact, in Dallas and Texas, where I am, it's very active, still engaging in the idea that you can repair someone who has a different affectional orientation. And the damage that does is extraordinary. It's lifelong. It's really no different from the impact and the lifelong impact of sexual abuse, of physical abuse. And it is abuse. It's spiritual abuse. So it's not only that something is fundamentally flawed about you, who you are and who you love is a flaw. But add to that God is going to punish you. Now,
I think that's part of the thing that that I pick up on is that I watch the players who are doing this type of or having these kind of conversations. And in a very real sense, they're masking sometimes, right? Maybe they're hiding behind something. And so in order to make it go away in their eyes, it is to do something so drastic as reparative therapy or whatever have you. And it's really all a guise to make them feel good about themselves. Am I off when I think like that?
No, I think that definitely plays a part in why people would engage in therapy that requires someone to change a fundamental characteristic. It really doesn't match in terms of what we teach or who we are.
Right.
But it also does speak to power and privilege that I somehow have this knowledge of what good is, what right is, what right.
Yes.
And I'm going to impart that onto all of the members of the global society. This is right. This is what's good.
Yeah. But at the same time, it's like, it's do as I say, not as I do, because then they get caught up and you see somewhere down the line, hey, wait a minute, you've been fighting all this time for this. And now what's
the
coming
truth
out?
comes out, you know, but you know what, you're right. And there is that, those of us who have not experienced reparative therapy see that as clear as day. Oh my goodness, this was a guise. Look, 10 years later, look who is now, come out, living out.
Yeah.
The damage, however, was done to those who experience reparative therapy. I'll give you an example. I've worked with clients who have experienced reparative therapy and, made it through, still have the weight of reparative therapy and the messages that were given that God is going to punish you. And so will tell me about every visit to the doctor and a test has an abnormal result, or there's something perhaps wrong. There's that voice that says, aha, here comes the punishment. Here it is. This is what they said would happen. Here comes God to smite me and take me down because of who I am and who I love.
I'm reminded, and just what you said just now, there's a lot going on in Texas right now with the governor. I don't know what he's signed into law or what he's trying to do in terms of the bill, but all that's going on for trans folk and how they're trying to make it, again, you talk about spiritual abuse, child abuse, all these other things that are being put on the table for someone who just wants to express and be who they are.
Yes. And that's a call to action. We have to be involved in our state legislation. We have to be involved in any kind of policy that says there's something wrong with you.
Something wrong with you.
Because of who you are.
Yeah. And it's mind-boggling to me when I see all these people who say that they want to live right and do right and all this other stuff, that we have politicians and others who continually harm.
Yes. Yeah.
And when I think about our code of ethics, first, do no harm.
First.
And then we have these people out there who, maybe they're not counselors by trade. I get that. I understand that. But isn't it ethical and moral to not do harm?
That so resonates with me. You're right. I mean, that stance of to do harm, to actively engage in harm, goes against humanness. It just goes against humanness, and it's done with very lightly, with glibly. That, of course, we're going to pass legislation that is harming people. And that's what we have to be on the front line, as far as I'm concerned, as professional counselors. We have to be on the front line saying, no, that's not correct. That's not accurate. We're not going to support any kind of legislation that says just because of your humanness, you're wrong.
Yeah. That speaks volumes. And, I think that when I talk with students sometimes or talk with counselors sometimes, they're like, that's not our role. And they come into our classrooms and they say, that's not, I just want to counsel someone. That's not our role to do this or do that. And my response often is like, we can't help somebody become well and then send them back into a broken system. That's why we have to do the advocacy work. And hopefully that resonates with them to see that, it's not just having somebody come into your office. That's not what this is all about. When we're talking about wellness, when we're talking about someone being a whole person, we're talking about it in their entirety, in their environment, in their communities, and how they see themselves in the world. Because if we continue to beat down them once they walk out of our office, how do we expect that they can live that life of wellness?
Exactly. And then the the other piece of that is you may be the only person in that person's life that affirms who they are and who they love. You might be it, and you never know if you're the only one.
Yeah.
So you need to be aware of how you come across, both verbally and non-verbally, because you may be that person's only safe space.
Yeah.
And if you think about the gravity of that, then everything counts, everything matters. And you don't just get to say, I just want to sit in my office and work with people.
Yeah. And never go into their communities to see where they live, how they live, and how I can be impactful in that, right? Because if you, that's just the mindset of, hey, they come to me, I fix them, and and then they go on about their way. And it's like, no, you knew nothing about them. You may have helped them rethink one thing, but you knew nothing about how that one thing impacted the rest of their life.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. I'll tell you a brief story. I first graduated with my master's degree. What we were teaching then, we probably still do, is solar position, right? We teach young counselors to be, you had to sit in your chair, you had to observe behavior, both verbal and nonverbal. You had to lean forward and then relax.
Yeah.
My first job was in case management, and it was during the time whenever people had HIV and were dying quickly with AIDS after 10 to 15 months. And the stigma was enormous, and the prejudice was just everywhere. And I'm a new counselor, and I knew I'm driving to the person's home, and I thought, I'm going to sit on the couch and I'm going to sit in my solar position. And one of them opened the door, and he was an executive, and his partner was in active stages of dying. And every morning he would wake up and change his diapers and feed him. And then he would leave his work throughout the day to care for his partner. Families had abandoned them. He could not say anything at work. There was no support. So he asked me, can we go for a ride? And inside my head, oh my gosh, how am I going to do solar position in a car? How am I going to be helpful? We went to a 7-Eleven. And what we did was sip Slurpees. He had a purple one, and I had an orange one. And all we did was stand outside of that 7-Eleven and have our Slurpees. Wasn't talking. There wasn't solar position. I was with him. I valued him in his way that he felt a bit of normalcy given the chaos and hurt and pain and grief that he was experiencing. And it was one of my most powerful counseling experiences to have those Slurpees. That's why sitting in the office.
That's incredible. And we all have to remember those moments and those stories, because I think that helps us stay away from burning out, and it helps us to recognize that we are there for the people who we call our clients, right? Mm-hmm. That we support them in that way.
Right. I still feel it as powerful as I did that day today.
And it relays that way.
Mm-hmm.
It relays that way because I think anyone listening can kind of think back to those moments that they've really connected with their client.
Right.
Because that's really what we want, right? That's what the rapport building is really all about, right? And we can get out of our own way and get there.
Yeah.
Right? Because you said it. I started off, how can I do this? How can I be in the position that I need to be in, taking this ride to 7-Eleven?
Yes.
And when you got out of your own way, voila.
Exactly. I could be in space, hold pain and grief, and just be with him.
Wow, that's powerful.
Mm-hmm.
So you shifted from counselor educator to also serving as a consultant in DEI work. How did you do that? What was it like for you?
Earlier you were referencing, being at conference. When I remember the first conference I went to, and I happened to get on the elevator, and in that elevator was Dr. Patricia Arredondo, Dr. Cortland Lee, and I looked at the name tags, and I thought, oh, they're on the back of my books. Freeze. And who would have ever thought in that moment that I would somehow have the opportunity and honor to serve in similar ways that they did as ACA presidents.
Yeah.
But I learned from them, and I am mentored still by Dr. Arredondo and Dr. Lee, and joined Dr. Arredondo's Arredondo advisors, schools, universities, cities. And the transition from being an educator to a DEIB consultant is this. I'm not there to teach you necessarily in a didactic way. I'm there to observe and give you feedback about ways that you are or you aren't being inclusive, creating a sense of value and belonging, addressing and incorporating diversity and equity. And I'm going to do that in relationship with you. And I'll use my counselor skills, don't get me wrong. But it's not a didactic experience. Not that we don't teach, but it's hearing what's that like whenever somebody schedules over your schedule all the time, or that
role modeling and that's how you mentor somebody into the process.
Exactly. Or what is it whenever you go into a meeting that it's always you as a female that has to take the minutes, right? What does that say? It's bringing out those nuances and people having those aha.
Yeah.
Okay. And you know, I just love the work, honestly. I just love the work, and I have the greatest opportunity to work with leaders and pioneers in our field.
You know, I think that's the part that gives me hope for our future. And one of the things that resonates well with me, I often think about those who are in social justice work and doing this work. And a lot of times what I find is there's people who come into this work thinking that they're the great savior.
Yes.
And they have all the answers. And then there are people who come into this work, and this is what I feel wholeheartedly coming from you, who come to the work willing to do the work and listen and to hear and to engage in communities of people. You know, you spoke so richly about that with how you dealt with your client early on by going to the 7-Eleven, right? I can envision people like, I can't do that. I don't, nope, I need to do it. You need to do this. Nope, we can't go to 7-Eleven. We get to do it my way. And I think that what you have spoken about and how you, in terms of social justice advocacy, is going and being, just being present, just being there, and allowing that to help create the type of change that you want to see in the world. Because that's truly when somebody feels like you're there for them.
Right. You're there for them, not in spite of them, and not to change them, but with them.
With them.
Yes.
Yeah. That resonated so strongly.
Thank you.
Well, we're coming up on the end of this, and I'm sad because I'm having such a good time talking with you. But is there anything that you want to just leave our viewing and listening public with regards to anything? Because I think coming from you, it's going to be powerful regardless. So what would you like to share?
I want to thank you. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for stepping up and being willing to serve as the president of the American Counseling Association and all that brought during these challenging times. And you did it with grace, and you did it with humanness, and you continue to do that every single day. And I am so grateful for you. And this time together will be one of the most meaningful times that I've had in my career, just us connecting.
Just us connecting. We have to, wow. I tell you, I can't wait to see you again in person. I really can't.
Atlanta.
At this point, because I feel this kinship. I do. Because you're doing the work.
As you are. Thank you.
No, thank you. I appreciate you. Wow. Well, this has been a very intriguing counseling hour, to be sitting here talking with the phenomenal Dr. Colleen R. Logan. Um, Thank you for everything that you do. Thank you for community.
Mm.
You know, I'm really feeling that. And so this has been The Voice of Counseling. I'm Dr. S. Kent Butler. I'm here with Dr. Colleen R. Logan, and we'll see you next time.
ACA provides these podcasts solely for informational and educational purposes. Opinions expressed in these podcasts do not necessarily reflect the view of ACA. ACA is not responsible for the consequences of any decisions or actions taken in reliance upon or as a result of the information and resources provided in this program. This program is copyright 2022 by the American Counseling Association. All rights reserved.